What's going on, guys? Fun with Knives back again. Got another review for you today, this time of the SOG Zoom. This knife was actually generously given to me by the Apostle P. I won it his small knife YouTubers that needed some more exposure giveaway. And that was actually a subscriber-based giveaway where you guys voted me as one of the winners. And as a direct result of that, I got a prize package, and in that package was this knife. Among a couple other things that we'll look at a later date. But first, let's get the specs out of the way for this thing. 3.625 inch blade, you got a 4.7 inch handle, and then your overall length is 8 1/4 inches. It's got a nice thin blade at 0.10 inches, so just a 1/10 of an inch for the blade there. And then your handle thickness is also fairly slim at 0.45 inches. Weight on this guy, 4.45 ounces, all metal construction, aluminum handle with some stainless steel skeletonized and nestled liners in there. So not a bad weight for this knife, and definitely not bad because it's all made out of metal. So a little background for me and my experience with SOG is I'm not a huge fan of SOG. And although I got this knife for free and I really appreciate that, SOGs are just not knives I'm particularly fond of. And I knew that going into carrying this knife and using it. I tried not to let that bias my review too much or my decision on what I thought about this knife. And I've dialed down my opinion to this. It's a love-hate thing. And before we get into the review, the reason I say that is I love some aspects about this knife. I mean, absolutely love it. And other aspects, I just hate it. I mean, SOG missed the mark on a couple of areas here that they really shouldn't have, and then other ones they just got absolutely right. So let's start with the blade. We got a very interesting looking blade here. It's a drop point with a severe recurve, and it's black oxide coated or some sort of black coating over an AUS 8. Now I keep hearing a lot of channels talk about how great SOG's AUS 8 steel really is. Apparently they cryogenically heat treat it and do all these things to it. I haven't noticed a huge difference in this AUS 8 compared to any other AUS 8s I've ever handled. In fact, this is a slight, and I mean slight, upgrade to Kershaw's 8CR13 MOV. I'm not seeing the edge holding capabilities of AUS 8 as very advantageous over some of the other budget steels. So that being said, I love the blade shape. I think it's very cool. It's actually fairly functional. I mean, I wish they would have done some things differently, but SOG is known for putting out these drop points with recurves or just very tactical looking blades in general. So here's a close-up of it. You can see SOG Zoom written on the flat there. False top edge here. I mean, the thickest part of the knife is right in the center, and then you have a very shallow hollow grind. It's not the best slicer in the world, even though this is a thin blade. But overall, I think it's very attractive. Not the most functional in the world, but it's a good-looking blade. And it does have a nice acute tip, so very easy to, puncture those tape or boxes or whatever you have to do those draw cuts with. The point is going to work very well for that. Now, sharpening this knife it's bad, guys. It's very hard to sharpen a recurve accurately. And one thing to note with this blade too is that the point doesn't follow the curve of the belly. It kind of swoops back down a little bit. I don't know if I can actually show that, but trust me, it is there. You can kind of see it there where the point does not actually follow that curve. So a little bit of a sharpening hiccup here as well. Something to note. But deployment here, guys, if I can talk correctly, is by dual thumb studs. They're kind of nested into that handle, if that'll focus for us. But they do raise up quite a bit, and they're very easy to access, and this is assisted. And this is one of my fastest assisted knives. I mean, it really flies out there. It reminds me of an automatic. And I think even in Nut and Fancy's review of the SOG Zoom, which he actually loves, he says this is a faux automatic. I mean, it comes out that fast. So I love the action on it. It's very fun to play with. Closing the knife is a little bit difficult because, like in auto, you need to depress the button lock or the plunge lock, and there's constant pressure on the blade. As soon as you let go, I mean, this has got spring tension all the way. So just treat this like an auto when you're closing it up, and you'd be just fine. Blade centering is just about perfect, maybe slightly right, but that could just be from some use. I haven't really adjusted this pivot or taken it apart. Now, lockup on this thing is a plunge lock. You can see here there is a safety if you want to engage that. This knife will not open once that is engaged. Now, I don't really need a safety on an assisted knife, and I don't think most people do either, but it's in a convenient spot and isn't too big or easy to disengage or engage, so I kind of forget it's there, which is nice. The Plunge Lock itself, like most SOG knives, has a ton of play both up and down and side to side, which just is not good for this price point. In fact, I've had $20 knives that have more secure lockup than this. So do I trust this in some sort of hard use roll? No, not at all. If I had to do some hard use cutting, this is not the knife I would go to. That lockup just feels, I mean, you can even hear that. Just a very poor lockup all the way around. It's a very little piece of steel in that Plunge Lock that's actually holding that blade into place, and there is a stop pin there as well. I think you guys can see that. Whole lot of black with this knife. It's kind of hard to see the internal workings of it. But action's good, lockup is bad. Now, ergonomics on this thing, again, we're going back to the love-hate thing. This handle is made out of anodized aluminum, which you guys know I love. Anodized aluminum feels cool. I think it looks cool. It reduces weight. It wears very well. I love the marks and things it gets, and it is just a black anodized. I believe it's 6061 T6, like most of the knife companies are using. Feels pretty decent in hand until you get into this portion here. This weird terraced portion is for your thumb studs, which really aids in opening the knife. You can see that terracing pushes your thumb into the thumb stud so you can access it easily. But when the knife is open, that is your first finger choil. You can see this whole handle has a spot for each one of your fingers, and each one lands in just nice, except for here. That is not a big enough area for your index finger, and you definitely feel it. Now, is it painful? No. Is it uncomfortable? A little bit. I mean, it's just not the best design for this handle. I mean, I wish they would have just cut this away, given me a normal size finger choil like the rest of them, and you still would have been, easily able to hit that thumb stud. So I'm not sure why they put that in, maybe for aesthetic purposes when the knife is closed, but either way, I'm not a huge fan. And you can get around that by gripping the knife a little bit differently with your finger up here, but then you're kind of pushing the limit on these other finger choils and hitting right on the raises rather than the valleys of them. So just something to note there. SOG written here, as well as on the blade, as well as the clip. I mean, so you are going to be, like Nick Shabazz says, a billboard for SOG, or ZT in his case. But SOG definitely brands everywhere in their knives, and this knife is no exception. But I do like the milling that they've done. It's not sharp at all, but it adds a little bit of texture on the back side. I wish they would have done this simple pattern on both sides, but of course they didn't. But overall, handle size is good, the material is good, and the fit and finish is actually pretty good of this handle. You can see here, the liners are exposed and they're not completely flushly fit, but it's just fine for me. And then on this side, they're kind of nested in there where you can't see them, and they are heavily skeletonized to reduce some weight. So I'm assuming if they weren't, we'd be pushing 5.5, 6 ounces on this knife rather than 4.5 of what it is. Very simple construction here. You got one screw that helps hold in the clip. You got 2 screws that helps screw these 2 pieces of aluminum together over the scales, and you just got your pivot here. Now the clip on this guy is not my favorite. It's a deep carry, simple, very small clip that works well unless your material on your pants gets on top of the knife. You can see that here this has kind of a waterfall effect going on rather than coming out and then going down. And what that does is that the seam of your pocket at the very top of your pants or shorts gets caught up on that, making it near impossible to pull the knife out. Now I love the clip as far as its color. I don't really mind that it says SOG, but the size is great. The ramp to get it into your pocket is awesome. It's just that this design just isn't working for me. In fact, I might kind of flatten that out if I'm going to keep this knife. Same clip as the SOG Aegis, and same criticism I have for this one as well. So guys, final conclusions on the SOG Zoom. Well, this is a Taiwanese made knife that currently costs you around $100 ballpark. You can find it cheaper some places, but Blade HQ right now has it for $99.95. But apparently there's a discount if you put it to your cart, whatever. We're gonna say around $100 for this knife. We're talking AUS 8, not USA made, with lots of blade play, a hard to sharpen recurve, questionable ergonomics, and a poorly executed clip. Do I recommend it? No, I do not. Do I think it's a cool knife? Absolutely. It's all blacked out. It's got a cool blade shape. It's got really fast deployment. It carries deep. Whether you can get it out of your pocket or not is another question entirely. But it's a cool knife. But is it the knife for me? No. Do I recommend it? Absolutely not. For $100, you can get a plethora of better knives than this SOG Zoom. In fact, I'm kind of shying away from SOG folders as a whole. I've had a couple of SOG fixed blades and have actually treated me pretty well, and I'm excited to do reviews on those. But SOG folders, I mean, they're known for having blade play. I mean, the company as a whole making folding knives has blade play in nearly every one of their models, which is just kind of sad to see. So no, I don't recommend this one, guys, but if you guys are in love with SOG, I think this is one of their better folding knives. So thanks for watching, guys, as always, and remember, have fun with your knives.